listening to or watching the More Than Roommates podcast. I'm Dan, here with my roommate Graham, and today we have a special guest, Dorcianna.
Hi guys, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good.
Have you been on a podcast before? You're already off to a great start.
No, this is my very first podcast, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm just gonna ride the wave.
Perfect. So welcome, Dorcianna. So you and Graham were friends, is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Take us down memory lane. How'd you meet?
Okay, when did we meet? That was
house party.
the house
Do you
party.
remember?
Oh yes, I do. That was like what?
It was like college.
2010?
Yeah, our Washburn years.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
somewhere around there. Maybe it was 2009.
I think it was 2009 because it was like right out of high school.
Or no, it could have been 11. I don't know, somewhere in that like, general range. But do you remember how that ended that night?
Was that the night the cops got called?
The ABC showed up and we had to go running for our
lives. I don't think I actually remember that because I think I'm confusing it with a different part. Party.
So the reason we have Dorcianna here is you kind of recently came out as queer, or how long ago was that now?
So about 3 years ago, I would say I kind of like had my grand coming out to like the world, but I feel like I've actually had like 3 coming outs total. Mm-hmm. You know, is that relatable to you guys?
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up in Kansas, you know, you don't really know what being queer really is or what it feels like. But when I was like around in 8th grade, I was like, something's just not really sitting with me well regarding just myself in general. And I was in high school and I started dating this guy, and at the time, Lady Gaga and Katy Perry were super, super popular. Oh, yeah. And I was obsessed with them. Mm-hmm. And there's one day I was sitting in the car with my boyfriend and I was like, I think I'm gay. And he looked at me like right in the eyes and he was just like, no, I think you're just obsessed with Lady Gaga and Katy Perry. and I was just like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Right. I mean, like it's the lyrics.
And she came out with I Kissed a Girl like around that era, right?
And I blasted that song. I bought the CD. I played it like every night before I went to bed. I had probably already kissed a couple girls actually before that.
So I was about to say, what made you think that? Was it because you were just listening to that music?
No, I think it's because I remembered that I had kissed girls before and thinking like, oh yeah, I did like it. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. So that obviously wasn't 3 years ago.
No.
So then what was that was your first
That was my first coming out, right? And then probably when I was about 22, 23, somewhere in that range, I was with a different guy. And I was raised very religiously, but I stopped going to the church probably around 19 because I wasn't living with my parents anymore, my mom anymore. And my son would still go with her to church. And one day he actually came home sobbing. And I was like, what's wrong? What happened? And he's like, I went to church and the pastor was talking about how basically hate speech, but saying like unwedded mothers, they should be prayed for, gays should be prayed for. Anyone,
the backhanded,
yeah, basically, yeah. And he had a best friend whose parents were gay, and he'd be over at their house all the time.
Wow.
And I've always raised my kids as just like, love is love. Like, you don't judge other people. Like, you be kind to others for the sake of being kind to others. And also at this time, I was very much like, I'm an ally. Mm-hmm. And so he came home and I was like, well, I don't want my son being exposed to hate speech. So I talked to my mom about that. And I was like, I don't think he's going to go to church with you anymore. And she took that really hard. And she was just like, I don't understand. And then I started just sobbing. And I'm like, it's because I'm gay too. And like, I just kind of felt like, how could I allow my son to go to church and hear this hate speech? One, just because it's wrong. But two, like, I'm not even living as my most authentic self. And to see him so upset by it, I don't know, it really made me feel like I needed to be myself if I'm teaching my kids to be themselves too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
that's totally fair.
That was the second time it came out.
So just curious, what denomination of church? Because I grew up Catholic.
I grew up Catholic too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's very
so
there's some religious trauma in here. I know.
And so did your mom take it well?
No, my mom did not take it well at all. She of course started crying. But over time, I think she just kind of accepted like, I'm an adult and I'm going to make my own choices, which is all you can really do as a parent. Let me come to my third coming out and then I'll circle back to my mom. So then I was married to my then boyfriend we were together for about 9 years, and we were married for 5, and we had 2 additional kids together. And we had some relationship issues, and it got to the point where it just wasn't safe or reasonable for me to stay in the relationship. And so I left that relationship and immediately was like, I'm going to start exploring my sexuality. I haven't had the space to do that ever. I felt like I had come out again, like I said, when I was 22, but I don't think my family or friends really paid attention. Like they were just like, cool, whatever, you're an ally. Like you're just cool with everybody. So when I had my first girlfriend, everyone was like, oh, you're gay now. And I'm like, I kind of always been gay, guys. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel like when did they phrase it just like that? Like,
yeah.
Did it feel like?
It kind of felt like, I felt like they kind of minimized me as a person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Cause it's just, some friends are very much like, well, obviously you're gay. Like that makes complete sense. So then for some of my other friends to not recognize it, I'm like, why? Like, what boxes did you put me in to not really see me as who I am, I guess? When, like, go ahead.
And it was, like, only validated until once you had a partner.
Yeah, once I had a girlfriend, that's when it was validated. And I think some of that, too, is because I present very, like, feminine most of the time. And I find that feminine women just, they're not taken seriously as, like, gay partners or being gay in general. And that's a little frustrating, too.
Do you feel any pressure to not be so feminine to come across, or just you are who you are? Like,
I still struggle with that actually. I'm not really sure because there's times where I definitely feel like I play more into like my masculinity side where I want to dress more masculine presenting clothing, but then there's other times where like I want to put on a pretty dress and do my makeup. And I think again because I teach my kids to just like, are you comfortable? Are you confident? Wear it. And so I'm trying to kind of stay in that mind frame for myself. Like, how do you feel today? Present that into the world and they'll just have to accept it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about being human. Like, we can just be us. We don't have to be categorizing ourselves in these little boxes either, you know? Like, however you're feeling, just go with the flow.
And I feel like when you don't put yourself in a box, it kind of helps prevent other people from putting you in a box. Because then they just start to accept, like, oh, they're just going to be who they are. But when you start putting yourself in these other boxes, then people kind of expect you to put yourself in the box. And it's like, you have to just do that for yourself. Just get out of whatever box you don't want to be in.
For sure.
So you've mentioned like your son had, you know, friends that were gay or their parents.
Yes.
So did you could you maybe tell us a little bit about what it was like? Like, did you come out to your kids?
Oh, yes.
Or
that was, I think, kind of more like just a subtle, like, this is my partner now. She's going to be around. I have this really like hard rule where I don't introduce my partners to my kids unless I feel like they're going to be consistent in my life or their life. So my ex-girlfriend and I...
Great mom there, yeah.
So my ex-girlfriend and I, we were actually together probably a good 4 months before she was coming around consistently. And then she ended up moving in with us and played a huge part in my kids' lives. And they didn't, again, because I don't put people in boxes, they didn't really have like a reaction.
Cool.
I think my daughters were just kind of too young to really like care or really understand. They're just like, okay, welcome. Like, want to play? And then my son was just like, I don't care, mom.
Yeah.
And that's so awesome about the younger generation. Like, they're just so chill, and it is really becoming normalized.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's just more exposure.
Because it is normal.
Because
That's
it's normal
the whole
now.
thing.
Like, I don't even know how I would react if like, when I was a high schooler, if my mom were to come home with a girlfriend. And also at that time, I had a lot of internalized homophobia.
So, it's the era we grew up in, for sure.
Yeah. And so for me to be that parent who's like, this is my girlfriend, after being with exclusively men for my entire life, I don't know, it feels really liberating to be able to say, like, I've raised little humans who don't see... They just see people for being people. Do you want to play? Like,
yeah,
you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And was there anything that triggered you wanting to like officially come out, or was it just like, I just want to pursue women now?
That's a good question. Like, I need to think on that. Can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah. So was there something that like triggered you to be like, I want to pursue dating women. I want to tell people who I am, or was that just one day you're like, okay, she's pretty, I want to talk? Was it an individual or more yourself wanting to come out?
It was more myself for sure. I think because again, I had internalized homophobia. I was always kind of scared to explore that part of me, and also very scared of how my family would perceive me being out, and not so much my friends. I feel like my close friends, they would just be supportive. But like you don't want to lose your family. You hope that they would understand and be supportive, but with
You just never know.
you never know, especially with deep religious roots. So I think I've just always been so scared. And after leaving my my ex-husband, I think I was just like, you know what, like this is my time to just start being myself, like to just live a life that I can say I'm proud of, that it was authentic. I don't have to put any mask on anymore. I can just be myself. So I think just trying to liberate myself really more than anything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so we touched on the religious aspect of you coming out, but you're also biracial. And so did that have an impact about how you were worried about how you were going to be perceived?
Absolutely. I do feel like being biracial causes more of a stigma because being queer in any capacity is typically not accepted in Black or Mexican communities. I feel like white people kind of get away with a little bit more. It's more acceptable for white people to do things or change up the scene before other races can. So it was very terrifying. Again, I didn't want to be rejected from my family. So yeah, the answer is yes.
But you said you have been accepted by a lot of people. Were you surprised by that or pleasantly surprised, or was it tough?
It was actually really tough in the beginning because I did lose a lot of contact with some of my family members. Circling back to my mom, when I was with my partner, there were some instances where I felt like she wasn't being like super supportive or respectful towards my partner. And I had to like have a conversation with her. And she basically was just like, I'm just getting used to the idea of you being like this. And so kindly, I was just like, it's not an idea. Like, this is who I am. And my partner is a person and deserves respect. And, if you can't be respectful, like you don't need to be in my space anymore. And that was really hard to say.
Yeah,
It was really hard, but it felt really liberating too, because explaining to her, I haven't always had a safe space growing up. And now that I'm on my own and I have my own house and I'm raising my kids, creating a safe space for them, I'm like, this is my safe space. And I refuse to let anyone, even my mom, which is hard, come in here and disrupt that. And so, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, we're keeping our peace going forward,
Keep your
right?
peace, guys.
Yeah.
Keep it.
So has she come around?
A little bit. But during that conversation, I kind of realized that she only wanted to accept the parts of me that she liked, because she basically had said she didn't remember me ever coming out to her, because I was explaining to her, I was like, I already come out to you, so I'm not understanding why the disconnect or why this is so confusing to you. And she looked me in the eyes and was like, I don't remember that happening.
Wow.
And so that's where go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, did it feel like a genuine response, or do you think she like blocked it from her memory?
I think it was a
Like,
mixture
maybe
of both. I think she genuinely blocked it from her memory,
Yeah.
and she was just like, I don't remember that. And that was really heartbreaking.
That's tough,
but
Sure, yeah.
I was like, well, moving forward, you need to accept all of me or none of me, because it's just who I am. Like, yeah.
Well, and more recently, in keeping tabs with your social media, you've been very out and proud and going to events. And so have you been advocating, or do you have a goal with now your newfound self?
Yes. So I have been on social media and going to events, like you said. I'm continuing to kind of explore the queer community because, again, haven't really done that. I went to a queer festival last year in Florida. I'm going again in a couple weeks. So I'm really excited.
What was that like?
It was it was so overstimulating, I'm not gonna lie. Like 5 days in just queer culture in a safe space where everyone is just free to be themselves. It was very liberating, but so overwhelming because I've never seen anything like that before. I came home, crashed really hard, like the festival. What is that? The festival crash, or like
recharge those batteries. Yes.
So I'm going again this year with a better like understanding of what I'm getting into. So I feel like I'll be able to really absorb a little bit more because it just flew by so fast.
Did you make connections with people?
I did. I made friends throughout the world. I have a friend in New Zealand. Now we communicate regularly. Florida, of course, because we were in Florida, Texas, like all over the place. And it's just so interesting to see how a lot of our stories are like paralleled and then just seeing like the differences too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That
And
is awesome.
I think this would be a good time for you to plug your social media. So if you guys want to follow Dorcianna and keep along with her travels, where should they go?
Yes. You guys should go to love_grows on TikTok, and that's LUV_grows. And then on Instagram, it's a double underscore.
Very cool.
Yes.
Awesome.
I hate it when people take the
good
I
stuff.
know.
It's like,
know.
oh, I want the same.
Yes. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I'm curious. I always like to ask my queer friends, like, at what age did you, like, roughly, did you
Yeah.
start to think, like, maybe, not saying, like, physically attracted,
Yeah.
but maybe just being attracted to, like, two different,
Definitely
more.
definitely elementary school. I would say probably by like third or fourth grade.
Okay, yeah.
I definitely was just like noticing all genders
Mhm.
because I'm queer. Like I'm not a lesbian. I identify mostly like as pan or just queer as the umbrella term.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely noticed everybody that I found attractive. What about you guys?
Yeah, so funny that you asked. And this is actually why I like to ask the question. So, what was it, 2020 or 2021? So, I have like, obviously, no one on the camera can see, but I have like, as soon as I bought this house, my parents were like, you're taking everything. So, like, all my childhood are in these closets right here. And do you remember when I went through everything, Dan? Like I started going through, I was starting to like throw things away to try to consolidate and make
So
room
I
for
could
this
have
guy.
some closet space.
But I found a journal from like 1999, and so I would have been in like fourth grade. I
Yeah,
was like 8 or 9 at the
yeah.
time, and I had talked like explicit, not like bad, but I had written out like about having crushes on like a girl best friend and a guy best friend that I had at the time, and it's just like I feel like I don't know. For me, it's a nature. There's always like the nature versus nurture kind of debate, but
For sure.
I feel like it's so natural.
Absolutely.
To have that at a young age. I think, but it's interesting because I didn't know if it was just me or if I just kind of like being that young. It's far before you're maturing and going through puberty and stuff, so you don't really know, but there's some kind of attraction there.
Yeah.
For sure.
What about you, Dan?
There were definitely signs from as soon as I could speak, it was probably very obvious, but I wish I could know when I figured out that it was wrong, because I could tell that I was having these feelings. And I grew up in a Catholic household, but it wasn't like my parents weren't super religious, and so they weren't against it. There just honestly wasn't any exposure, and I
Right.
couldn't tell how they felt about it.
Midwest thing too.
Yeah,
Also from the Midwest.
I was
so,
asking Graham if he ever like had a teacher who was gay, and no one was out, so I
No.
just didn't see them interact with anyone. But for some reason, at like I would say like third or fourth grade, I just knew to start trying to lower my voice to
Yeah.
not have a pink Game Boy anymore. So I mean, there were signs.
Don't stand in the underwear aisle too long.
Yeah. So I mean, it was obvious.
That's
but-
me at the bra area. Just looking at what bra I want. Don't worry.
But yeah, so very early on.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I've had a therapist be like, "Well, it's just media that's telling kids to be gay these days," and I'm like, "Ma'am."
Has told you that?
Yeah,
Wow.
That's
it was
sad.
awful. But I was like, ma'am, when I was younger, we did not have the representation. That representation did not exist in the 60s, 70s, 80s. There were gay people existing then. Like,
They were just hidden.
yeah, everyone was just so closeted. And it just drives me crazy because it's like, why do people care?
I know. This whole entire world is made up, if you think about it. Money, like everything is just
Like,
a human
why does
concept.
my
Like,
sexuality keep you awake at night? Like,
Right.
it really shouldn't matter.
I know. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And the people that it's so funny though, like when we do shorts and stuff on social media, we put clips it, and it always ends up on
Right wing talk.
Yeah,
people
the
that aren't.
straight
And I'm like,
side.
why is this popping up for you, for one? And I'm like,
The algorithm is algorithming
it's
me.
algorithming. So I'm like, y'all
There's a
must be
reason.
searching for something. And so it's like, y'all, again, it's like those people that invest their time to hate on it. It's like, don't you have something
It
better
just
to
sounds
do?
so exhausting.
It
Well, and
does.
being raised religious, I do remember feeling this huge shift where like they say like love your neighbor as you want to be loved or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was so, can I swear?
Sure.
Okay. I was so
Yeah.
I was so fucking judgmental when I was in the church. Like I was so worried about everybody else, what they were doing, judging them. Like I'm just so much better than them. At the second I started like living my own life, focusing on myself, being myself, I didn't care about any of that stuff. I was just like, I'm just here living my best life, and I hope everybody else is too. But I just to feel that shift in myself, like that is very liberating too.
I definitely had like that conflicting. So you brought up a really good point about religion and like them telling you to love your neighbor. But then on the flip side, like the priest that or pastor that, was leading the sermon with your son and your mom, then you get this mixed messaging. It's so complicated for no reason.
It
It's
really
like it
is.
should be like black or white in that case. Like you either love your neighbor as you love yourself, or you're a hypocrite, in my opinion.
There's
But,
a lot of hypocrisy within religious.
yeah.
Yeah, we want to do a whole episode on that. We have not yet. I know it'll rub people the wrong way.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
that's something too. Like, do whatever brings you comfort as long as it's not harming anyone else.
Do not
Yeah.
harm other people.
Right.
Like be kind.
Yeah.
Well, is there something else you wanted to discuss? Oh, well,
Yeah, we got a
Yeah,
good,
we-
good breadth of questions, and it
New
was really cool to.
perspective.
Yay, thanks for
It's
having
cool
me.
to like honestly like we've been friends for so long,
I
but it's like good
know.
to get to know each other on a deeper level. Sorry, I had to be on like
No, this is
an
great.
episode.
I
but
feel
it's
very
so
comfortable. We can chat anytime.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you'll be a
absolutely.
returning guest.
Please.
But thank you for coming over and
Yes.
sharing your
Yeah.
story. It's not everyone is willing to be so vulnerable and open, but
Yeah.
thanks for coming
Yeah,
by.
thank you so
Yeah,
much.
we're hoping like we want more representation, so we want like our listeners that we're trying to build to see like this is okay and you can have any situation in the world.
Oh, absolutely. It's never too
And-
late to start being yourself and living the life you want to
Exactly.
live, for sure.
Awesome. Well, make sure you guys find Dorcianna on TikTok and Instagram at love_grows.
Grows. Yep.
LUV
LUV,
And
yes.
it'll be on the screen.
and a
if you're
double
watching.
underscore for Insta, right? Yeah.
We got you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. We're going to be trying to get more voices in, so you're not just hearing the white male perspective.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for watching.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.